Hello, my name is Holger Seim. I'm the Director of Drama Studies at UTM, and I'm here with Aaron Jan, Director of Kat Sandler's Cockfight, and a returning director at TDS, where he directed Servant of Two Masters 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were using that recording device to actually look through the show. Yeah.
That's right, because it was streamed live, but without an audience.
Yes, it was.
So you're doing this your second comedy for us, but
Yeah.
this time with an audience.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of questions.
Please.
For people who don't know, Cockfight is kind of, I suppose you could say it's sort of an indie classic of Canadian theatre. That Kat Sandler is sort of a classic figure at this point of the Toronto indie scene.
Mm-hmm.
And is this the first time, do you know, that Cockfight is being done again since its initial production?
Believe so. It's unpublished. I had to scrounge around for the script because I was thinking when Andy messaged me about coming back to UTM and they gave me choice of show, I was like, I think I want to do a Kat Sandler, but I think I want to do this filthy play from 10 years ago. I saw in June in 2014 where these three guys just beat the shit out of each other in a ring. And I remember sitting there and being like, wouldn't it be fun if students did that? Wouldn't it be so silly if they did that? So yeah, I messaged Kat. I asked for a copy of the script, and she was like, "This is so silly. Let's do it."
Cool.
So now we're here. Yeah.
Now I remember. So this is a somewhat unusual situation.
Yeah.
Right? So since I think the more common situation is that we sort of put a season together and then we approach directors and say, here's this play, do you want to direct it? But you were, when I remember the conversations, you came with suggestions and sort of convinced us that we should do the play.
Yeah.
And I love the play.
Yes.
But what was clear from the beginning was that the year of students you're working with did not have, I guess to fill in the blank, the play has, 5 characters?
5 characters, yes.
And 4 of them are male identified.
Yes.
Identifying and seem to be also assigned male at birth as well.
Yes.
So, and you knew that wasn't going to be your cast.
No.
So the playing with and at the same time, I think, it's fair to say it's a pretty testosterone-driven play. So can you talk a bit about that?
Sure.
What interests you about that?
Well, I think just obviously when I got the show, I was like, okay, 4 men, 1 woman, and it's about toxic masculinity. Right. And I looked at the numbers and I was like, okay, that's not going to work. But then I was like, wait a minute. As a male, cis male, who's grown up with toxic masculinity, I think it's more interesting to see how toxic masculinity affects not cis male bodies. That to me is my fascination. The show is about 3 foster siblings who grew up with an incredibly physically and sexually abusive foster father. Yeah. But they also kind of idolize him as a hero. So I was really curious about okay, to me a lot of the show is about cycles of trauma and how that we give trauma to the next generation, especially as I guess cis men in toxic relationships and in toxic upbringings, how we are unable to break those cycles. So my curiosity was, okay, these are 3 characters who have been raised by a cis male toxic father figure. So what traits did he pass on to them? And I think just what makes the show really interesting is there's a cognitive dissonance in which you see bodies that are not the mask bodies that are written per se. You see those bodies inherit some of those traits. And it kind of creates a really cool effect where you're I didn't expect that out of that person, but it still feels really honest and still feels just as hurtful. So I'm really interested, I guess, in this production, how toxic masculinity influences not just cis men, especially when their parental figure and the person they idolized was that. So that's kind of my curiosity. We're not really hanging a lampshade over it. It's just a part of the world.
Yeah.
I think that's always more interesting in theater when it's just a part of the world and we're not making a statement about it.
Right.
But it's just it's just a part of the world and the audience can leave being oh, that was strange. Because I feel sometimes when we look at toxic masculinity, it's so easy to just be oh, this guy's a jerk. I've seen this archetype. This guy hits people. Screw this guy. But I think when it's in different bodies, it's actually when it gets more sinister. It's I'm going to talk about race for a second, but like the whole classic, like, I will tie you to the railway tracks, like the Snidely Whiplash type of racism, where it's like, oh man, you hate those minorities. To me, that's so easy to dismiss. It's like, oh, I know that archetype. But when it happens in a body that we understand, in a body that like we're not used to seeing that in, that's where I think it helps the audience and myself interrogate that more in our culture, because then we can't just dismiss, oh, it's this jerk archetype, or I guess from this summer, oh, it's just another Ken type running around surrounded by more Barbies. But yeah, I think there's something like really rich about this exploration. I'm so glad Kat greenlit it. There's very few rewrites, I'll be honest. It's mostly just pronoun things. Like, Mike is referred with she, her pronouns. That's the only...
interesting.
That's the only difference, because I was just like, I don't want to change the intent of the show. The show is still about toxic masculinity, and thank goodness Kat was okay with that. Because if not, then we'd have to reshuffle a bunch of things. But yeah, I really wanted to like stay true to it, because I think there's something really interesting about doing texts as close to as they're written, and then you discover something in the directorial through line, and then the statement you make isn't with a finger wagging at the end. It's like we just sat through that, and I feel a lump in my stomach. And they didn't try to like make a salient point with it. They just showed a situation happening that I wasn't inherently familiar with, even though I thought I knew about it.
Right. Okay, I want to come back to the text, to the text question, but I want to stick with the characters for a bit longer, because that's really. I did not read it. I had no idea where you were going to go with actually working with the show. I didn't know whether you're going to change pronouns, whether the female identifying students were going to play men or whatever. So masculinity is really. I mean, so when you said, well, the thing about what you said about bodies, like you made that literally, like these are not bodies that are inhabiting other identities, or they actually they are the bodies that they inhabit privately, or the identities they inhabit privately. But the masculinity is it's almost detached from gender identity, and it's just a sort of toxic force of a set of behaviors or assumptions about the world and whatever.
Totally. Like, it's learned. I think that's my big thing. I really wanted to make sure, pedagogically, that they were playing honest, truthful people. And to me, it was really important that they play, not versions of who they are, but they played their identities, whatever they bring into it. Because I think so often when we're playing villains or people who are dislikable, we try to distance them so much from ourselves, and they become these like stock characters. Whereas like with this show, I was like, when I was looking at it initially, everyone's a hero. All 5 of these loser creeps are all heroes in their own minds. And they're all doing things to save their family, or build a better life for themselves, or beat their trauma. And they do terrible things. So to me, it was really, really important to keep the lived identity of the actors playing them, because then pedagogically, you can't distance yourself from it. You're like, I think the discoveries we kept making with Mike was like, Vivi Valo, who's a wonderful actor who plays Mike, was like, I think she came to a discovery 2 nights ago. We were talking about it. She was like, this human is so fascinating. He's so nuanced. He's so rich. And like, there's just something really exciting about this opportunity of like playing them as truthfully as possible. And also, it makes it more terrifying when the bad things happen.
I mean, it's this, as I'm sort of listening to you and thinking through how this works dramaturgically, it is actually, this is really fascinating, because you took the character, I mean, in this family, like the three foster children who sort of recreated themselves into 3 blood brothers.
Yes.
So of the 3, Mike is kind of the one who seems the most stereotypically male, right? He's the one with all the girlfriends and like there's a main squeeze or whatever.
Old time dialogue.
And a small time crook and a cheat or whatever like this. So you took kind of the one who ticks the most boxes in the sort of on the sort of masculinity on the toxic masculinity sort of chart.
Yeah.
So that's the one you cast.
Yeah.
With a female identifying student.
Well, to be completely fair with you, casting was kind of tabula rasa. I had no idea where anyone was going to go. But then, like, I don't know, just watching Vivi do the audition, I was like, okay. And I thought about it more, and I was like, no, I think this could work. I think it could work, because then you see what's learned. You see it, like, you see, like, what is learned and passed down through the father. which I think is always so fascinating, so rich in the explorations.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. The way the woman who's learned to be a man is trying to turn the other two into real men, right?
Yep,
Like,
yep.
That's sort of, I guess, one way you could read this.
Yeah. And like save them. I think that's the richer narrative is like she's trying to save her family.
Right.
She's trying. I think there's one line in the show. Maybe you'll have to censor this out. Is like August screams from over there, "Stop being an asshole," and then Mike screams like, "I have to be." Because when a bigger asshole comes along, you know what to do.
Yes.
Like, it's all done through love, which I think makes it more insidious and more interesting because they're trying to escape these cycles of toxicity, even though they're embracing elements of it. But in turn, because these characters are unable to talk about how they're feeling, they're unable to talk about their trauma and their lived experience, and like it does things to you. It makes you feel like a failure. It entrenches those feelings. We had a lot of conversations in the room about, especially about Mike, how Mike has never talked to anyone about what happened on that night.
Yeah.
So whenever trauma is mentioned, this family doesn't know how to deal with it. It's only when Ingrid's put into play when they actually start to deal with things.
As an outsider.
Yes, and then things become incredibly violent because this like salvation character appears and she saves one of them, and then the rest of them kind of descend into a horrible, horrible place.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's an interestingly rich experience this has been.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
But Ingrid has one of the lines in the play that I think kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets to a lot of what you just said. The thing about family do the worst things to each other because they love each other.
Yeah.
Like
families hurt each other the most because they love each other the most.
Yeah. Which is kind of Tolstoy. But it's also,
well, I find Kat borrows a lot from like, even though this is like 10 years ago and like the schlocky, fun theater brouhaha era of Kat Sandler, I always find that like even in like the incredibly delightful crude dialogue, there's like little allusions to like classic literature. Like Mike, if you look close in the set, Mike is reading Sophocles in that corner. Like, there's little details Leslie set up. He loves Greek warriors. She loves Greek warriors. And there's little things. There's little like, it's a classic tragic structure. It's characters believe they can change themselves. It's very Greek the way this ends, not to spoil it, but it's a very Greek tragic ending. It's like she sets up all these little Greek things, and then like the payoffs are so brutal and so satisfying. The only difference is that the brutality is shown on stage in this.
Well, no, but it isn't.
Oh, yeah.
No, it isn't. The murder itself is not.
Oh, no, it's not. No.
Just the end. And that is super Greek. That's exactly what
there you go.
That's super Greek. Yeah. I mean, that's they bring on the corpses. Yes. They just don't show them being killed. Mm-hmm. So it's actually, you're right. That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let me circle back now to the thing you said about working closely with the text.
Yes.
Right? So this, I mean, I'm assuming that's partly an effect of working with a modern play. Right? So last time you directed for us, you were working on an 18th century play.
I certainly was.
And had your way with it in the best.
I had so many ways with that play.
It was fantastic. I mean, so I have two questions about that. Like, so one has to do more with just a difference in approach, right? Like, so when you're well, when there's a text that you kind of have to follow, at least by sort of cultural convention, and also by legal convention, I guess,
yes. Like,
and how that changes. If you could say a bit more about what you were sort of starting to say earlier, about how that changes your way of thinking in the room.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a living playwright, too.
Yes.
One who I respect a lot. I don't know, I have to look at the camera. One who I respect a lot. One who I respect a lot and was kind of like a hero to me when I was like going out of theater school. I remember watching her plays and just being like, oh, you can write like that. Like, oh my God, like you can write these filthy things. And I love all of these characters. So going into the show kind of different from Servant, where I was just like, we're going to do our own thing. With this one, I was like, no, I want to tell the story on the page. Sometimes I think I challenge the text and I do things. With the show, I'm like, no, I want to tell this story as honestly as possible. So that was kind of my guiding light through this. It's like, okay, we're going to tell the story. And there's like little gizmos and gadgets I've thrown in that you will see when you see the production. But for me, it was like the story is so compelling. It's so contemporary, even though it is set in 2014. So technically it's a period piece because Server's Wage is 890 in the show. But like my goal was just to tell the story as cleanly as possible. And yes, there's moments of theater magic. Like I go ham on the transitions, and we have a boxing ring sign up there that does really, really fun things. And I do fun things with the rooster when the very alive rooster shows up and is very alive at the end of the play. But yeah, I wanted to really not get in my own way this time. And I say that in the most delightful way possible. Sometimes I feel when I direct, I'm just like, I'm going to build the coolest image of this one. I was like, no. I think I'm going to not rely on my craft and my skill here. Even though I have craft, but I'm not going to hide behind it. I am not going to get in the way of the story that's being told. And not to say that with Servant, but in a way I did that with Servant. But with this one, I was like, my challenge for this show, just tell the story. Tell the story in the best way possible and keep it to my vision. But it's all in the text. It's literally all in the text. My joke with them is there's no subtext in the show, which is wrong. But everything's in the text, and everything I did, I pulled from things that were there. For example, we are sitting in a parking garage right now, but the stage direction of the script says, it's a house, it's a place that looks like nobody should be living in it.
Right.
So we just went for that, and we just went a mile with that. So so I let the text be my guiding force this time, as opposed to an artifice I put onto it. Because I think I remember what I felt when I saw the show 10 years ago, and how moved, excited, and horrified I was. And I was like, sometimes I don't think you need artifice. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I don't do my theater magic, but it is for this one. I really, really wanted to tell the story and really wanted to put that as my guiding light.
Okay, now what does that? My impression from Servant of Two Masters.
Yeah. Oh, we're not. That's how Servant. Yeah.
Was that? Well, no, we're not.
No, I can talk about Servant for hours. I didn't do one of these for Servant.
But so by way of
yes.
When I was watching that and watching the actors.
Yes.
My sense was that one thing that happened in that show, among other things that we got to watch, admittedly during the interval, but whatever, we got to watch Nitch eat a cookie for 10 minutes, which I loved. I loved that. I was like, no one ever gives us the time, just watch an actor eat. But obviously that's also something where, once you give an actor that space, the actor's going to do something with that time.
Of course, yes.
And there's only so much you as the director can do and probably will want to do to control what happens in that time. So my sense with that was that you were giving the actors a lot of freedom.
Yes.
Now, how does that is that different with this process, or and if so, how?
No, it's not.
Okay.
My process is always the same. Sometimes minor things change because my goal, based on one of my mentors, Philip Aiken, is to get them into runs as quickly as possible. So what we do is we begin with table work, where we break the show into units collectively. So I define those as world changes. Then we block. I run with their impulses. There's actually a similar servant moment in the show. We have a 7 to 10 minute pre-show where Sean just does whatever he wants on stage for 10 minutes. We know the track because it's written in the stage directions, but we turned that into a pre-show because to me it was really important to show this horrible space is lived in. So we do table work, we block, and then we run, and then we examine, and then we run, and then we examine, and then we run, and then we work bits. My goal as a director is to empower my cast. Today is the last day of rehearsal, so at the end of the show, I kind of do a ceremony where I give the show back to them. It is their choices that have built this. It is their impulses. Obviously, we always try it against story to make sure it's active and we're actually telling the story of the text.
Yeah.
But I let them decide the units, and we fight over them all the time. But to me, it's so important on every show you do that the actors feel like the show belongs to them.
Right. Even
when you're doing a mega musical, even when you're doing a weird interpretive, I'm making boxes with my hands. It needs to come from them because otherwise we're just manipulating them, especially with students. Because if these students, in my pedagogical mind, if these students don't leave with a sense of agency, with a sense of I'm showing up to set with my own choices, or I'm doing new play development, and they don't have time to direct the acting, so I'm going to dive in here with as many choices as possible. That's what I want to evoke in my process, no matter where I'm working. But in theater schools, to me, that is very, very important. So going back to Servant, that cookie thing to me is actually a metaphor for the whole process. Because I'll create a container, they'll play in it, and I'll tell them what's working and what's not working.
Yes. And
that to me is, that container building to me is so important in all aspects of theater. I think using the cookie actually as an example, where the thing was, you're going to sit here for 15 minutes, you're going to eat a cookie, and you're still gonna be on camera, and that's it. How you eat that cookie is up to you. How you consume that cookie is up to you. We know how this is going. You don't have to finish the whole thing. We do know that when Smeraldina comes in, that cookie needs to be put away or it needs to be shoved entirely in your mouth. And it will change every night. But I think giving the parameters of the container allows all creatives to be more creative.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay, so now how does that, right? I mean, I think I know what the answer is, but like, so if you, on the one hand, say you're working with a relatively recent play by a living playwright.
Yes, I am.
And you're committed to the story.
Yes.
And you want to reduce you don't want to, when you said I don't want to get in my own way, but
yeah.
I won't phrase it like that.
No, please. Oh my gosh, please.
No. But you don't, but you know, you sort of want to transport the play.
Totally.
That's here. And then you have 5 actors making lots of offers.
Yeah.
And now part of the job then obviously is to, as you said, to make sure that those offers mesh with the story. But there's a huge surplus on that side.
Yeah, of course,
right?
of course.
Which is kind of key, right?
Yeah. I think just to respond to that too, it's like, we'll throw in offers, but I always test it. What's the most active offer? What's driving the text?
Oh, interesting.
Like that to me is like, yes, it's throw in all your offers, but it's the best offer wins. So when we sit and we do units and we find out where the shift is, then we challenge it. It's just like, okay, but is that actually fueling action forward? Does the world actually change there? It's all about action. It's all about driving it forward, especially with the Kat Sandler play, when the characters don't, it's not like an Annie Baker play where the characters vibe and just hang out.
Right.
Maybe that's a discredit Annie Baker. I love Annie's work. But like,
it's also nice.
I mean, it's so kind. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But like in a Kat Sandler play, they're going at all times. They're fighting at all times. There's a world shift. They have to switch gears. So I'm always encouraging the most active choices possible. On the first day of rehearsal, we talk about traps in the show. What are the traps of the play? What is the bad acting version of the show? And we build that, like, this is another Phil Bacon thing, but like, we build that on the first day because then the actor can be like, I fell in that trap. Like, Mike's trap is all aggression. All aggression or all love. It needs to exist in an in-between world. Like, she loves her siblings, but she's easily able to whack them across the head and be like, you're stupid, listen to me. You know?
Right.
So it's like, we develop vocabulary in the room, but it's always tested. What is the most active offer? And also, what is the offer that actually increases the stakes for everyone? So we're always driving action.
I mean, what you just said, I mean, the aggression versus love thing, right? I mean, if you read a sort of simple-minded reading of the text would be the former, right? So where Mike's constantly saying aggressive shit.
Yeah.
So but see, I'm sorry. I think I'm pushing against the telling the story part because so much of what you're talking about to me feels like, well, you have the play, and then what you and the actors and the set and everything brings to the play actually enriches it and isn't predictable based on the text.
Absolutely. Well, I also think, just building on that too, the opposite is always more interesting. Like when I read a speech of aggression, like when I read Cassius, let's talk about Cassius and Caesar, which just happened in this season. Cassius is like, hates Caesar, hates Caesar so much. But inside of that is a deep love for Brutus, a deep love for Rome, and a deep love for so many things. So whenever I see, like, I love villains, I love bad people in my life and also out of my life, because I view myself as a villain. And like, which is a whole other thing we'll talk about in our therapy session in 3 hours. But please help me. But I do think there's like, when we're dealing with villains, I always wonder what's the good in them. And I actually think it's in the text. Even though Mike is saying horrible shit in the show, it comes from a place of incredible love. Like at the end of the show with Charlie, where they're building that pyramid together, there's a stage direction where it's like Charlie builds the pyramid. After a moment, Mike helps. The pyramid gets built quickly. And when I charted Mike's path through the show, I was like, this is in Mike. She wants to save her family. Every week, there's a new pyramid scheme, like the microwaves up top, because she's trying to get them into a better life. Because she's trying to be a parental figure they never had. Because they went to all these foster homes, and everyone else abandoned them. So she's desperately trying to do that. And I think that makes our villains, I put that in quotations, because I don't view Mike as a villain, but our characters who do bad things more enriching. Because if we just play like that twiddly, I think about the racist tie you to the tracks, ha 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 ha. that's not interesting. And also,
Right.
not only is that not interesting, that doesn't affect anyone. We can't see ourselves in that. So, like, by creating a mic that is full of really fucked up love for her siblings, I hope the audience is able to see those traits in themselves and not have them answer nice container and be like, oh shit, I did that this week. I did that. Oh my God, I behave like that. Or I enable that behavior. Like that, to me, that is my goal when I make theater, is to put rotten people on stage and have people fall in love with them and then feel betrayed by them.
Yeah. And it sounds like fall in love with them because they're recognizing something of themselves in them as well.
I think that to me is like theater's great power of change. When you empathize with jerks on stage and they're not redeemed, or they are redeemed and it's horrific. Like there's something about that cognitive dissonance that I actually believe, I don't know why I'm doing this, that I actually believe is the transformative power of theater. Like to me, that's how we actually create change. It's that when we empathize or connect with people or understand people who are not like us at all, they don't have to be villains. They can be anything, but like actually developing that sense of that, oh my God, this person I never thought was like me is like me. Like that to me is like, that's the thing. One more anecdote, then we'll ask the next question, but I think my grandmother used to go to Stratford and like barely spoke any English. And I remember she would watch Maggie Smith on stage and leave not knowing anything, but she understood every single word Maggie was saying, even though this woman was nothing like her. And to me, that's kind of the root of theater. You go in and you leave affected by someone who's not like you, and you're like, I get that. I can take that home with me.
Even if you don't want to, though.
Yes.
It's funny because the anecdote was nice, right?
Yeah.
Like but there's like what you're talking about is also a kind of danger.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And the kind of an identification, or a sort of identification that you don't want necessarily, right? Or like feeling like, oh God, what I I don't want to recognize myself in that, but.
I think there's a beauty in that, though, of leaving being like, I am the slime. The slime on the walls is part of my hands. That's me. And like, just giving the audience an opportunity, if they want to confront that or brush that off.
Right.
But having slime live in you is always exciting for me.
You know what? I think that is an excellent closing statement. Why don't we treat it as that?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
Cockfight opens tomorrow, which is Thursday, February 15th. And then runs through Saturday, and then we take a break for a week, and then it's back for another run. And I hope you'll be able to join us.